In today's stream, we're going to start building in FlutterFlow. Last week, we completed the entire UI UX in Figma for our Closure Academy app. And today we're going to be beginning our FlutterFlow projects. Fantastic. So what you see here on the screen are my designs. Last week, we finished up our onboarding flow, authentication, the homepage, and kind of the core user experience. I purposely am not overcomplicating this. I just wanted to deliver the value that I've set out to deliver. My hypothesis is that can I make a sales rep better by offering them an AI-powered tool that gives them a scenario to challenge themselves every day, and upon completing this challenge day over day, can I charge them a yearly subscription to become a better sales rep? So I'm going to be incorporating a lot of strategies and principles that I've learned over the years of building apps, and just keep this very straightforward. Like, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 screens. I'm going to try my best to generate $1,000 ARR with just 22 screens. And today we're going to get right into building with FlutterFlow. So let's jump right into it. Cool. So with my Chrome open, we're going to go straight to flutterflow.io, and I'm going to sign into my existing account. Remember, if you are part of Dreams into Apps, you get 2 months free FlutterFlow Premium. When you get to the start your UI phase, the FlutterFlow phase, you will be able to request your 2 months free FlutterFlow Premium. And then we redeem those 2 months FlutterFlow Premium at the beginning of every month. So if you submit your 2 months today, at the beginning of July 7th is normally the deadline when we try to get those redeemed. By July 7th, you should have 2 months FlutterFlow Premium added to your account. So that's an exclusive partnership that we have with FlutterFlow. And if you're new to Dreams into Apps, just know that's coming down the pipeline. We purposely don't do it at the beginning of the program because we want you to be building your UI after you do the planning and the design phase. So when you get to that point, you'll be in the right place. So we're going to call this Closure Academy. And I'm going to start blank. I don't need to create a template right now. I think it's going to be just fine blank. So I'm going to call my project Closure Academy, and my package name, this is the name that you will kind of be identified by in the iOS and Google Play Store. So if you just kind of do a quick research here, I just want to quickly explain what package name is. So package name is like your your bundle ID. So this is going to be like the ID that your app is represented by. Apps on the App Store can have the same name. Like, there can be 2 Closure Academies, but there can't be 2 package names that are the same. So Apple and Google have created this convention to make package names as, as like unique as possible. They don't want the names or IDs to collide. So notice here, every app that's on your phone has its own package ID. So essentially, we're creating our own package name. There's no right or wrong way to do this. You can do it pretty much any way you want. I like to do my company name my app name. And if you don't have a company, you can do closureacademy.closureacademy. It really doesn't matter. The theme, I'm going to keep this way for now. I'm just going to use default. I'm going to keep web disabled because I don't want to enable web app here. I just want this to be for mobile. And we'll keep this in light mode. Firebase setup will enable because we are going to be using Firebase for this. I'll make my screen full screen here. Cool. Fantastic. Next step. Awesome. So now we're going to set up Firebase. Remember, Firebase is the backend that we're going to use to handle our authentication, our database, push notifications, and a lot of other backend technology. It's a platform powered by Google. We'll just go ahead and click create. Project name is Closure Academy. I'm going to set the region to the region that's closest to me, which is NAM5, United States. Sign in with Google. Okay, I'm going to log into my Google account. And this is going to create me a brand new Firebase project. It's going to take a few moments just to do that. So in the meantime, I'll just kind of coach you up on what Firebase is. So Firebase is a backend as a service that is built by Google Cloud Platform. It was actually, I think, a YC company. And then Google acquired them because it was such a good product. So now anybody can build a production level backend just by going to Firebase and spinning up a backend. So the database that it uses is called Firestore. And this is a JSON database, and you'll learn more in the program. JSON is a type of data, which essentially is a nested tree of data. JSON objects require knowledge of data types. So in computer science, one of the first classes you take is data types and data structures. So you need to understand like what data types are in order for you to use a JSON database. Another word for a JSON database is a NoSQL database. There are two types of databases, SQL and NoSQL. SQL databases are like spreadsheet oriented. NoSQL is JSON and kind of tree-like data structures. And I'll kind of just do a quick search for you. SQL databases are essentially you connecting together a bunch of spreadsheets, whereas NoSQL databases are you creating blobs of data or documents of data that are represented in JSON format. And you'll learn a little bit later what JSON is, but that's kind of the basics. You know, we're using a NoSQL database, and NoSQL databases are easier for beginners. I wouldn't recommend jumping into a SQL database if you're a beginner and you're not ready to learn SQL statement. SQL is a query language. It stands for structured query language. I wouldn't say it's a programming language, but it is a language that allows you to look up data in a database. So because we're using a NoSQL database, we don't have to learn that type of framework, or excuse me, that type of programming language. We can just insert and read data directly from Firebase. It's very, very simple. And I'll show you guys that a bit later. So at this point, our Firebase project should be created. And the next two things are to enable some of the services back at Firebase that we're going to need to build our app. Number one, the service that we're going to need is authentication. This is the system for your users to sign in and sign out and create accounts in your application. So FlutterFlow makes it really easy to enable auth on Firebase. Once you click that button, it'll take you straight to Firebase, and we should be able to land on the authentication screen and hit get started. Most builders get this part wrong. They forget to hit get started and things never work. The next step is to enable email and password. And I'm just going to enable email password sign in, which essentially means like, hey, how can users sign into your app? Can I use sign in with Google? Can I use sign in with Twitter, Facebook, Apple? You do all that from within Firebase. That's the beauty of Firebase, that it handles all of this provider logic for you. You don't have to worry about hooking up the various APIs. So if I wanted to do sign in with Facebook, sign in with GitHub, sign in with Twitter, like you name it, all that can be done from within Firebase. Okay. For this MVP, we're just going to focus on email and password. Later on, we'll come back and actually implement Google. So I'm going to just turn this on now, and we should be good to go. When you create users in your app, you're going to watch your users kind of populate here, and you never know. If we move fast enough today, we might get to that point. So cool. Now auth is enabled. The next thing we need to enable is storage. Storage is how we're going to save data, and not just like user data in JSON. This is actually files. So our audio files that people are going to be uploading into the app, because we're an audio-based product. So we need to have a storage system. And this is essentially a cloud bucket, as many would call it, for us to store information. For now, I'm going to start in test mode, which will allow anybody to read and write to this database. That is definitely risky long-term, and I'm trusting whoever's on this live stream and watching this in the future. I will flip this back to production mode when we're ready to actually deploy this to production. But if you're watching this uncensored, I trust that you're not going to try to, tap into this. And if you do, I'll find out and I'll close the database and we'll start from scratch. And it's not a big deal because I'm not putting any sensitive information here, especially in storage, because we're just going to be storing, I guess people's voices are pretty sensitive. And so you need to be thinking about that, right? Like we don't want to just open up a database of everybody's voices that are using our platform. That's kind of sketchy. So we do need to start thinking a little bit more critically about, how do we save our data and be responsible about the data? So I'm going to keep it open for now. And then we're going to come back to this and actually tighten up the security rules. Security rules we're going to cover a bit more. There's some lessons in Dreams into Apps about Firebase security rules. And then we also have a bunch of YouTube tutorials on what security rules are and how you can effectively use these. You can also talk to Coach Ambitious, and what's now about to roll out is the Superbrain. Superbrain is going to be our pretty much know everything Superbrain of Ambitious Labs. It's been trained on all of our coursework, all the recordings, everything you guys are doing in Discord, documentation of FlutterFlow, Firebase, you name it. We've trained up a Superbrain. So you can even ask Superbrain to create you some security rules. But with anything ChatGPT related, you're going to have to look at it. You can't trust it for everything. It's going to have some issues. Cool. And I think two people are saying they can't hear me, but I see my audio is working really well. And then Ron says that it's going well too. So If you have any questions about audio, just spam the chat. Otherwise, I encourage you to test it yourself. Cool. So at this point, we have auth and storage, and I'm going to tap on complete Firebase setup. At this point, we're generating our config files, and a lot of people don't know what these are. Config files are actually the files that are generated at the Flutter code level. What does that mean? Flutter is actually just, FlutterFlow is just dragging and dropping and putting together a Flutter application for you. And Flutter apps typically are like files, like .dart files that all compile together to build an app. So FlutterFlow is just making those files for you. What's happening here is we're generating that configuration file that Flutter as a framework needs to know what Firebase instance and what Firebase configuration it needs to point to. So this is super important. And right here, it's actually generating a piece of code for us. And if you were to export this code out into, GitHub, you would actually see that code. Okay, so we're going to enable authentication. We're going to enable the user collection because we need the user collection in order for us to save users. The initial pages. Right now, we don't have any initial pages because we started from scratch. So what I'm going to do first is create a blank page. And we're going to find one that's like a welcome page. And if we don't have one, that's totally fine. We'll just find one that looks like ours. We'll go auth. And let's pull up our Figma design real quick too. So this right here is our welcome page, like become a better sales rep in just 10 minutes a day and with the carousel. So we just need to find something with the carousel. And I think this one looks really good right here, right? Like this is actually perfect. Onboarding too. So I'm going to say go with my theme and we're going to call this welcome. This is going to be the first page that users land on that give you the value proposition of Cozer Academy. Okay. Fantastic. And then the logged in page, this is going to be our home page. And as of right now, we don't really have anything on the home page. And so I see a hand up, but in these live streams and lesson labs, I don't actually answer questions live. So if you have a question, please post in the chat. I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you. Thank you. Cool. So where was I at? We want to find the home page. So the home page is our complete your daily challenge page. And right now I'm not going to focus too much on this. We will just find a basic home page that gets the job done here. Let's search for something like dashboard. This isn't too bad. Let's just grab this one and we'll call this home. Great page. Fantastic. Start building. Let's go. We've created our FlutterFlow app and we've connected Firebase. I can verify that by heading over to settings, tapping Firebase, and I see nice green buttons here. Firebase storage rules are not deployed, so I'm just going to go ahead and click deploy there and get that out of the way. We're probably going to want to deploy this a few times, but it's good practice just to get it out of the way here. Fantastic. So the next step is now to start kind of building out our UI. Okay, so the next step is to pretty much copy all this stuff over. So what we have here is a carousel. And as of right now, I haven't really built out like what my carousel is going to have in terms of pictures and stuff. So let's come out here and kind of chisel this down. And again, this is the art of just building an app, like chisel, chisel, chisel. We should always have a chisel mindset because oftentimes I see too many entrepreneurs not have a chisel mindset and they're trying to like implement way too many things. So what I'm going to do for sake of MVP is chisel down pretty much everything it has here. Oops. I'm going to get rid of this page and just pretty much have one page. That's all. And for this image, it does look like it's an animation and that's all good and all, but we're just going to chisel this down. What I'm going to do is find a nice image that I can use for my background. I currently don't have one here, so let's go find one. Sharing my screen now. I'm opening up the Icons 8 Figma plugin. I have the free version. If you do upgrade to the premium version, there's also other plugins out there that make it super easy to find like stock images. And so we will find this out. And then Francis, to your question there, will you have to connect the backend to specific screens to ensure functionality? Yes, 100%. That's definitely what we're going to have to do. But right now in this phase of the app building process, we're just focused on building out the UI, which is just like the working prototype. It's going to be pretty much everything you see here in Figma. We're going to bring it over to FlutterFlow. Does look like this plugin doesn't really like me. This plugin's taking a little bit long. Icons 8. Cool. Let's look up something called like sales, not for icons though. We'll do illustration sales. Not really a big fan of these. Let's look up photos, sales. I hate these types of stock images. The ones that are just like photo shoots. We'll do sales, money. Let's find a different one. Cool. Let's try another plugin called Icon Scout. We can use Icon Scout as a place to find some illustrations. So I'm going to just search Icon Scout right here. This is one that I have in my list of plugins as one that I've used in the past. All these plugins do have like paid offerings. And like if you're going to become a UI UX designer, you probably have these. As you can see, these are all like premium. So here I'm just going to search for like sales. And we'll go illustrations. Looks like we found some cool ones. That's cool. But they are paid. So what can we do? Let's go filter, free, and see where we land. Okay. There's some interesting ones. And honestly, I'm not going to spend too much time here because we totally can come back and modify these. Filter, free. Cool. So we'll insert this as an SVG. And now we got oops. Damn, I lost it. Cool. Now what I'll do is I'll grab this. I'll just kind of swap it out. This looks good to me. I'm going to grab this frame, export. Cool. And we'll head back here and I'll take out this staggered view and we'll paste an image here. Beautiful. Then I'll change the image type on the right-hand side from network to uploaded file. And this will enable me to upload, excuse me, not uploaded file, asset. And this will enable me to upload an image. So I can just grab an image from my library here. I accidentally hit the undo button, so I'll bring that back up. So I'll set the height to about 100. We'll kind of see how this lands. Cool. We'll move this container, and this container still has a little bit of issues. So we'll say 80%. Cool. And what we'll do is we'll take this container, we'll put some padding on it. We'll say 40, 40, 40. Good. Nice. So we're starting to come along here, and then we'll just copy over some of this content. Become a better sales rep in just 10 minutes a day. We'll grab this subheading and we'll drop it down here, and then we'll copy some of our font styles. All right. So for font styles, I like to use the FlutterFlow theme system here, and it's good to set this up now before you kind of go too far. So essentially what FlutterFlow styles allow you to do over here is pretty much be able to create a design system. And as you guys know, we're also kind of prototyping a design system inside of Ambitious Labs. So this is a really fun way just to keep all your fonts the same. So pretty much what we can do here is we can find out what font this is by double clicking on it in Figma, and we see it's called DM Sans, right? So then we can go back here to font family, and we can pretty much just search for DM Sans and select that. Okay. Now we can select DM Sans for pretty much everything. So we'll go to typography and icons, primary family, DM Sans, and we're just going to go click DM Sans for pretty much every headline and display, because that's what we set in Figma. And this is good just to do now because, like I said, you don't want to keep having to change your fonts and your colors and all this stuff later. If you just do it in one place here, we can actually just inherit from the typography system and keep track of it. And then I'm not sure if and even our body text here is also DM Sans. So it's totally good just to set it all to DM Sans. When you get your Figma kit back from the Dreams into Apps team, like you can just look at what typography system they used and kind of keep track of it there. So cool. Great. And then I also set up some colors here. We have our colors. And if you go to the dark mode, sorry, not there. Cool. I'm just opening back up Ambitious Moon, which is the version 1 of our design system. So I'll just go back to Ambitious Moon. And if I go to foundations here, I can actually see our colors that we've chosen. So the moon colors for dark mode are right here. We are actually working on modifying this to be lined up with FlutterFlow. So here we're going to grab Piccolo. I'm going to set this as my primary. Okay. And then we'll grab Jiren. Not quite my secondary. My secondary color, I'll use this. Oops. And then we'll keep tertiary and alternate and all that stuff the same right now because we're not really changing too many colors. Okay, gorgeous. And now, and then actually one thing I forgot to do in the design is to set my background color. So another thing I like to do when I'm initially building an app is get rid of dark mode because I just want to maintain one specific theme. If you do dark mode and light mode, it just adds a lot more work for no reason at this stage. Like right now, we need to focus on building the app. If you're experienced and you're building in a studio, then you can totally go light and dark at the same time. But like right now, the mission is idea to $1,000. I'm not going to let any distraction get in the way of that. So that's good. Primary background, we need to change because our primary background color is the like background color of our app. So if I go back to Closure Academy wireframes and go to my designs here, we need to use this background color. It's pretty much just black. So we're going to set our primary background color to black. And then our secondary background color is essentially the color that contrasts on top of black to give us like a card. Currently, we don't have one, but I want to make one right now because we need that. So I'm going to set this fill color to something like a kind of a light gray. I'm going to bring some purple into it. I think that looks kind of good. So we'll use this as our background color for right now. I can always change it. And that's the beauty of this. Like primary background can be this, secondary background can be this. And so as long as we use the same colors everywhere, we can just change them in one spot. And that's the beauty of this. Primary text will be white. Do we have any other text? We do have a tertiary button here that I want to make sure is reflected. So we'll grab this and set the tertiary button color. Good. And then we have this error button color. We have this, they call it danger in this specific design system. So we'll say error is the same thing as danger, success. We might have our library of success. We have warning, danger. We don't quite have success. So that's all right. We'll use their version of success for now. Warning, error, that's good. Primary text, we think it's white. That's fine. Let's double check it to make sure. Yep, it's FFF. And then this is also FFF. That's good. Accent colors will keep the same. Totally fine. And cool. I think we're good. So now if I go back to our design, you'll see that some things have already changed, and that's fine. We just need to make sure they change the right thing. So we'll tap on the topmost widget here, and this is called the scaffold. Scaffold is essentially the page that you're working on in FlutterFlow. So we'll click on the welcome and update the secondary background to the primary background. And that didn't seem to do what I wanted it to do, so that's kind of weird. Primary background is black, but it still looks like there's nothing changing. So it's probably because this column fill color secondary background. We want to change this to primary background, but there's something up here. There's two columns essentially, is what it seems like. We'll drop this down and check on the container. Yep. The other thing we can do is just get rid of the fill color, and I think that should have actually cracked it, but doesn't look like it is. So we'll just change the fill color to primary background. No, I don't really want to do it that way. I kind of want it to, I'd rather change it all at once. So I'd rather just go welcome, primary background. And then there's something that's avoiding this. Maybe because there's some clipping going on. So I'll get rid of this guy. There we go. Now things look a lot better. All right, so let's go back to the top and keep working through this. So become a better sales rep in just 10 minutes a day. we want to make sure we're using the right font. So I'm going to call this display or headline small. Yeah, this looks a lot better. Definitely looks like there's some padding issue here. So let's figure out what's happening. Yep, looks like I found some padding. And you'll learn all these things inside of the program. I'm just kind of flying through this to see how quickly we can take this thing to market, right? For text, we probably have this set to secondary text. I want to change that. We actually don't have a secondary text color, so let's go back and change secondary text also to white, and that should take care of this for us. Fantastic. We're making good progress. I'm not kind of sure what happened here. Cool. Gorgeous. And now we want to bring back that continue button. So change this from next to continue. And we'll change the button color to primary. And then the text color to primary text. Then we'll change that to continue, which is what we did. And then we want to make sure that in the components, which I'm not sure if we are creating components yet, I'm going to right click this, say convert to component. I'm going to call this primary button, create the component. And essentially what this is going to do is it's going to allow us to create one primary button that we can use everywhere. So this primary button has a radius of 50, but in our design, we don't have a radius of 50. So I'm going to double click here just to see that the radius here is actually 8. So I'm going to go back and change this to 8. Gorgeous. And now that kind of updates my button. So if I go back to the page now that I was working on, and I go home, oops, not home, welcome, my continue should already be done for me. Okay. Beautiful. I do want my continue button to be pressed down a little bit. So I can do it a couple of different ways. I can either space the column out, which could work if actually, I don't think that's going to work because I don't have this. So what I could do is I could push this down by updating this container to be a little bit bigger. I could say 50 pixels. But then that kind of messes up what's inside of here because I think it's actually, yeah, there we go. And then I can update this. Yeah. Actually, we update this to 45. Yeah, I think that looks a little bit better. And we can always kind of tweak this. We're going to have to preview it in test mode later. But anyways, first screen down. Now what I'm going to do is create a brand new folder. And I'm going to call this folder onboarding. And onboarding is going to contain all the all of the pages that relate to onboarding. So we'll call this onboarding. And then I'm going to create another folder called core app, which is essentially going to be everything that's core, like the actual main user flows, user journeys, where I'm going to be extracting the core value of my application. And then I will create another folder called components, which I will use to store all my components, which are essentially reusable elements, right? Pages, I can get rid of that folder. So cool, I got onboarding, core app, and components. Each one of these have one thing. That's totally cool. Great. Moving along. Next step, we got to create the next page, which is going to be login and sign up. Let's see how I feel about this. I'm trying to understand how we can kind of combine these, because in the game of building apps, every step that you ask your user to take, you should essentially assume that you're going to drop off 10% of users for every step that you ask them to take. So what I mean by that is that if we make them have to go through 10 screens, for each screen, you're going to lose 10% of users potentially. So you're going to go from 100 to 90 to 81 to 72, and then blah, 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 all the way down to potentially zero. So we want to make sure that we think about ways to optimize the flow. So what am I thinking here? Well, first, let's kind of head back here and put together the next screen. So we'll go auth, and I'm going to skip right to I'm going to skip right to a screen that looks as close to what we have as possible. Which I frankly think is something like this. So we're going to say my theme, and then we're going to say login, called create page. I'm going to move this login under onboarding. Okay. And the first thing we notice is that there's definitely some colors that are off. So we'll go login, change secondary background to primary background. That should fix a couple things. And then we will find our image because this is the image that we want. It's actually a nice image, kind of like it. So we'll go export. Let me make sure this exports. I know it's paused. Give me a second here. I'm just pulling out the background image. So just give me a moment here. Go auth. There we go. Gorgeous. Share my screen again. Cool. So login. We're actually going to change background color. We actually need something else here. We actually need this background image, but here's what I'm going to try. Before I commit to that background image, I'm going to see if I can get away with just doing this logo. So I'm going to do text, remove this. I'm just going to grab an image and bring it here. Okay, path, network asset, upload. Okay, let's see if I can get away with something here. So it does look like I accidentally added a little too much stuff, which is okay. I'm going to export this again. We're going to call this rocket icon. I'm going to re-upload this as rocket icon. Okay, I like that a little bit better. I'll come back and fix this. Okay. So there's that. And then it does look like our UI here is definitely a little bit different than what we have. Trying to decide how we should go about this. Should I kind of use the tabs that they gave me because these are good tabs? And should we just get on with it? Or should we actually match our design like exactly the way it is? As much as I want to match the design the way it is, like I also kind of want to move so we can get to functionality. Let me know what you guys think. Should we try to match the design or should we go good enough and just keep moving? Okay. Francis says use the tabs. I'm down to use the tabs. I just want to make sure everybody's happy with the direction we go. Okay, cool. Thanks, guys. Uh, Here we're going to update the. Naomi says whatever I want. She's awesome. Border color, primary background. We're going to change this back to primary text. Let's think through this. Okay. What would happen if we change this container from fill color secondary background to primary background? That doesn't look too bad. And we go secondary background, and let's say we make the border color primary, and then the fill color, we make this primary. What does that look like? Okay, it's not too bad. It kind of looks weird with this being purple too. Let's just not even try that. Let's get rid of the border. I don't think this looks too bad. I kind of like how it looks. What we can do here is we can get rid of the scroll on this container. We can try to keep this the way it is. All right. I actually don't think this looks too bad. I definitely want to be focused on functionality. So cool. We built out a page that's definitely different than this, but it works, right? Create account, log in. So we have create account, and we're always going to optimize toward people coming in for the first time. And then we have login. Let's focus on create account. So let's get started by filling out the form below, or sign up with Google, sign up with Apple. For right now, I'm not going to worry about Google and Apple. We can definitely come back to this. But like I said, functionality. We will update get started. And I'm actually not a big fan of this button. I want to make sure we're using our componentized button. So we'll say add component primary button. And then we'll change this to get started. I don't like when like text input fields are rounded and then the button is rounded too. Like a buddy of mine who's a UI designer at Facebook, he was like, you need to have like two separate styles for buttons. Sometimes it will sometimes it's easy to like mix them up. So cool. Right on. And then here we have continue. But the thing is that this continue button, oops, is attached to the component. So I want to say instead of component, I think I should have used a template, which is fine. We'll add a template. I have a few already, but here's what I'll do is I will bring back this button. Here's what I'll do. Let me go back to this get started button, and then we'll change this radius to 8. We'll go full width. I think right now my width is probably blocked. So we'll go unlimited width. Good. This looks a lot better. Now I'll right click and save as template, and we'll call this primary button. Component is different than template in that component has like predefined logic and predefined properties that you cannot change. Template is essentially like a starting point where you can still modify the properties. I got that mixed up. So cool. Now we have, instead of get started, we want to change this to create account. And then right here, we'll say by creating account, by creating an account, you agree to our, you agree to our terms and conditions. Tap to view. And essentially what we'll do is we'll add an action on this. When somebody taps this, they can actually view the terms and conditions. But this is essentially called a click bind agreement, where you can pretty much tell a user, hey, by clicking this button, you are agreeing to terms and conditions. It's called a click bind agreement. It's a good way to kind of easy way to get out of having to have them hit a check mark. So cool. Create account looks good. Log in. We'll say welcome back. Boom, boom, boom. Love it. Let's grab this button that we created here and bring it here as well. Let's get rid of this button. Get rid of sign in, get rid of this, get rid of this. Cool. And then for forgot password, like I kind of like where this is headed. We can still use this for a create account. Does look like this has a border. I want to make sure we're using the same styles. This has a border of alternate and the border width is 2. So we want to do the same thing here. We'll say border width, border color is alternate. Okay. And then here also border color is alternate. Great. And then for forgot password, I think we should just use the text background. So for fill color, I'm actually going to remove the secondary background all like just completely just by setting it like that. And then the border color, set it like that as well. And I'll change this to a tertiary button, which we already have. We have the text color. Text color was going to be tertiary. Gorgeous. And I don't want this to be bold. I think it's fine if it's medium. Gorgeous, plain and simple. I love it. Thanks, y'all, for the support. I like how we got this quick. Good. We're moving along. All right, next step is going to be what happens after, right? So now we have the sign up and the login. And then we can come back and implement the actual functionality here. But then after you sign up and log in, we want to take you to a onboarding screen. So we have a few more minutes. I'm going to go for about 10, 15 more minutes. And what we're going to try to do here in the next 10, 15 minutes is we're going to go ahead and implement this screen, onboarding 1. We'll definitely copy paste that over into onboarding 2, which is essentially the 2-step question. And then if we have the time, we will try to implement the actual authentication. Otherwise, we'll come back into authentication, but let's keep moving. So cool. Next step from here is to head back to our onboarding, add another screen. And all I'm looking for here is like a list view so that I can quickly put together kind of this type of UI. Kind of like where this is headed. We'll call this onboarding question 1. Background color, primary. You know how it goes. Background color, primary. This screen is going to be the screen that somebody sees if they are if they're creating an account for the first time. So we're going to take them directly here from the create account page. Okay. So let's kind of match this. Recent orders, we're going to change this to what are you looking to achieve? We want to make sure that we are, this needs to be wrapped in a container so that we can actually kind of get that container to expand correctly. I seem to be crashing it every time. It's probably because the column, yeah, this column needs to be wrapped Actually, not quite. Container. Oh, there we go. That's the reason. Cool. What are you looking to achieve? That looks good. And then we want to make sure we're using the right styles. This is DM Sans Bold 24. So we're going to try to head back to headline, and we'll say headline large. Okay. And this is semi-bold 32. So let's head back and just make sure that we have the right stuff. So we'll say headline large. What was this? 24. Go 24. No, let's keep it that way. Headline medium is where we'll say bold, 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 medium, medium. Headline large is bold. Headline medium is medium. Headline small is there. And then we'll just change this to 18. Okay. So cool. Now this looks a little bit better. And we'll middle align this. Does look a little bit bigger than here because it's 32 still, and this is still 24. Oh, we forgot to change it to medium because that's what we did over there. Headline medium. But our medium is not bold like the Figma file is. So we'll say medium, bold. All right. And we'll get rid of this. What are you looking to achieve? Select your most important goal. Gorgeous. Coming along. And we don't really want users to back out of this because I want users to keep moving forward. So I'm actually going to get rid of the icon button for right now. I got to move this back. Good. And now let's kind of power through the selection. So we have double my close rate, secure a sales job. So the way I like to build out lists is I just like to build out one, and then we can do the rest using the generate dynamic children function. So we'll go right here, rich text. We'll change this to double my close rate. I'll get rid of this extra one. And then I'll drop an icon button into this. And we'll change the button to an arrow. And I'll get rid of the fill and the border. Gorgeous. And then we'll get rid of this. Boom, we've just created our first item very quickly. So double my close rate. The next step from here is I'm going to make sure that we're in a list view. We're not in a list view, so we need to add a list view here. All right. So I'm going to bring this list view into this list container. I'm going to drop that into there. I'm going to add some padding top to the list view. And here's a really cool thing that we can do. We can go list view, generate children from variable, and we can say option, value, random data, list of random strings, minimum list length 4, maximum list length 6. Minimum length is say 5, maximum length is 30. And what this will do is it will generate us a random list. And what we can do is just use that to kind of populate this. So here, instead of double my close rate, I'm going to get rid of text span and option item. That's enough because I'm generating a list of random strings. And for each string in that list of strings, it's going to map one of the UI elements to the screen. And that is a concept in computer science called for looping, where we are looping once for every item in an array. I can explain that concept a bit more, and we definitely go over list views as a concept inside of the program. So you can definitely learn about that there. But essentially, we just built out this. The next step from here, because The next step from here would be to build out this bottom skip or next, but honestly, I don't want people skipping, and there should be no way of going next. The only way to go next is by clicking one of these. So simple, sweet. I'm going to make somebody click one of the items. Once they click the item, I'm going to move them to the next screen, right? So now we can just right click, duplicate, and I'm going to rename this page onboarding question 2. And boom, now we have the second one. And the second one is, what do you need help with? Or let's say, what are you struggling with? Make them select their pain point. Select your biggest struggle, right? And we'll leave that alone. Boom. Now we got 2 onboardings. Okay. Let's double check what error we have here in the top right. So it says navigate action for button set to page that doesn't exist. Yep. I'm just going to get rid of this because we're using a component here. Okay. Now what I want to do is just wire up the actions so that I can navigate from one page to another. So we'll click on this continue button here. But if you recall, I'm using that component. And honestly, I don't want to use a component. I want to use templates because I learned that I used the wrong thing. So we'll go welcome. And then I'll get rid of this continue button. Instead, I'm going to add template. And we have this primary button now. And I'm going to use the widget tree to kind of bring this down. Good. So I'm just going to add 40 pixels. Oops, not like that. That's because I'm inside the column. So this primary button is here. There we go. Gorgeous. Get started. Let's see what's wrong here. Okay. Get started. I'm going to add an action, and the action flow editor opens up on the right-hand side, which is essentially the menu that you will use to tell your app to do stuff whenever you click on something. So we'll click on get started, and we'll just add a very basic action to navigate to the login page. Straight and forward. When you click get started, it'll take you to log in. Beautiful. Then when we log in, when we get to the login page, this is where we have to implement the actions for authentication. So when I click on create account, this is when we will trigger the authentication function at Google Firebase and tell Google Firebase that we want to initiate auth. So we do this by actually first naming our input field so that we know where to get the email and password from, because that's what you're probably asking, right? Like, how do I, on button click, get information from a text input field? That's a concept called two-way binding in computer science. So what we're going to do is name the input field. So click on your input field, and in the top right, you're going to see right here. This is where you can actually name your widgets. So I'm going to call this email address input. Okay. And I always like to name my variables stuff that's like very easy to get defined later. And then we're going to call this password input. Okay. When I click create account now and I go to the action flow editor, I can now call an action called create account, and create account will take in parameters like, create account will take in parameters like who is the auth provider. And you remember we set up the provider at Google Firebase earlier in this lesson. I'll click on email. The email field, I'm going to click on email address, email address input. For password, I'm going to click on password input. Confirm password field, I'm going to put password input. These are the inputs that we just named, right? I want a user document to get created, which essentially means like when a user tries to log in for the first time or creates an account, it's going to create a record in our database to keep track of the user. Okay. So create user document, boom, created document will sit inside the users collection. And for right now, we won't need to set any fields. We'll just kind of keep it the same. We will set some fields in the future. I already kind of am thinking through the logic that we're going to need. But for now, let's just leave that alone. Cool. So now our authentication should actually be working. And if we tried to use it, it might work. However, it's mad at me for having two of the same. And this is a new validation it looks like that FlutterFlow did because it found out that probably too many people were just like using the same thing. I actually don't like using the password input field for confirm password, but I guess we'll do it. So we'll copy and paste this. Just right click and click duplicate. And then we'll change this to say confirm password. And then we'll say confirm password input. Okay. Now when I create the account, I'll say confirm password input here. Okay, that error should go away. Now we'll head back to login and make sure these are correct. And instead of calling it email address input, I'm going to say underscore login. And I'll do the same thing. Password input underscore login. That way I know which one is which, right? I don't want to accidentally grab the other input field. So login, email address input underscore login, password input underscore login. Then instead of create account, I want to say login, right? And when somebody clicks on login, I'll open the action flow editor. We'll change the auth function to Firebase authentication login. And the parameters we're going to provide here are auth provider equals email, email field equals email address input underscore login, because that's the one that maps to this specific page. Then we'll say password input underscore login, because that's the one we need for this page. Fantastic. So now we've actually wired up our authentication. But the next thing we need to do is make sure that when create account is triggered, that we're actually going to the right place. So notice at the bottom right here, we see navigate automatically. This essentially means that, hey, when a user creates an account, I need to detect if they've created an account and they're logged in, and I'm going to send them to the screen that you told me to send them to over here in app details under initial page, entry, and logged in. If I enable navigate automatically, it's going to use this logic right here. It may be that we want to control where the user goes, right? And if that's the case, then we want to set that setting to false. Like we want to turn that off so that we can control where they go. Then I'll add another action after they create an account. And then I'll say navigate to onboarding question 1. This allows us to control where they go. And now we know, hey, somebody can only get to onboarding question 1 if they're creating an account for the first time. Awesome. So we're making crazy good progress. Within an hour, we literally have like a whole app built with authentication. I'm going to go ahead and run this in test mode and see where we land. If we get this working first try, hallelujah, we'll call it a night. If we don't, we'll fix it before we call it a night. Let me know if you have any questions while we're waiting for test mode. And if you're seeing this for the first time, don't be alarmed. If you're inside of Dreams into Apps, you're going to learn all of the basics here. You're going to learn all the fundamentals. I'm assuming purposefully that you guys understand the fundamentals as I go through this. This isn't meant to be like a really in-depth tutorial. This is me trying to prove a point that we can build an app quickly and get it to $1,000 quickly. So let me know if you have any questions. All right, moment of truth. Looks like we have some animation here that I'm not really liking. I'm gonna go back and see if I can pull that off real quick while I'm here. So it does look like there's an image. And if I find the animation tab, looks like there's an animation here on page load. I'm going to delete all animations. All right, cool. So that should get rid of that. Moment of truth. If we click get started, beautiful. That takes me to this page. And I kind of like that animation, so I'm going to keep it. But one thing I'm noticing is that we have a little too less padding, actually no padding at all on the login. So I'm going to head over to login and make sure safe area is turned on. If it's turned on, then honestly, like I'm fine. But just for like sake of like just for some sanity, I'm just going to add 10 pixels right here. Let's make sure we get a little bit of padding at the top, because no matter what phone we're using, you never really want stuff sitting too close to the top of the screen, unless you're building obviously like a full screen user experience. So cool. I love those animations. I'll keep those there. And then this guy doesn't look like it's very happy with me. But I also believe it's because safe area is on, and so it kind of knows. But I'm not going to take a risk here. Spacing 10, image. We'll say 10 as well. All right. So create account, log in. I love how that looks. That's actually looking pretty sweet. All right. So in order for me to test if authentication is working, I'm going to head over to Firebase and open up my authentication tab. I'll open the users tab here to keep track of how many users is going here. And moment of truth, let's create an account. I'll say alim@live.com. Password is alim123. Confirm password is alim123. Create account. Looks like it errored, but if I go back to Firebase and refresh, it does look like my account was created, but something something inside of my FlutterFlow app went wrong. So how do we know what went wrong, right? Like this is the $1 million question. Well, we can use something called the debug panel to see what went wrong inside of the inside of the FlutterFlow environment. So we'll click on Chrome 3-dot menu, drop down to more tools and hit developer tools. Okay. And then we're going to try this again. I actually have a feeling though that the app is currently logged in. And if I hit instant reload, the app is actually going to take me to the home screen because I'm actually logged in right now. I know this because I have experience doing this, and I've seen this happen like one too many times where I think it's going to take me to the home page. Yeah, because right now the app thinks I'm logged in because it did successfully create me an account, as you can see right here, but the app had an error on the front end. And this is where having the knowledge of, full stack app development is really going to come in handy, because I, as an expert app developer, like I understand that, hey, there must have been a front end error at the Flutter runtime, and this didn't have anything to do with the back end. So because the apps are decoupled by nature of how FlutterFlow works, I'm aware that, hey, there's an issue on the front end itself. And we're going to teach you that stuff as well as you start getting more familiar with how FlutterFlow, Firebase, and the whole stack kind of work together. So here's what we got to do as like a little hack. I'm going to go to my home page, and I'm going to change this icon button to a logout button, just like one of these. Okay. I'll change that color to like an error, just for sake of having it. And then I will go to the action flow editor and add an action here. I'll go backend, Firebase auth, log out. And then what this will allow me to do is quickly be able to log out of my app so that I can go back and forth, and test the authentication flow. This is just a quick hack that I do as a developer to go back and forth quickly. I see a question for short form video app platform. Is it the same as what you're teaching now? Absolutely. Yes. The fundamentals I'm teaching you now, you're going to use in every single app. Authentication, reading and writing data, API calls. If you can keep track of what I'm doing and you understand why I'm doing the things that I am, you will definitely be able to build a short form app as well. These are a lot of fundamentals. So check this out. I'm going to click this button. And I don't think that worked because I might have refreshed too fast. Sometimes you need to reload like a little bit after, and that's totally fine. This time, if I click log out, it actually logs me out. Cool. And again, The name of the game is experience. I only know these things because I've ripped my hair out and banged my head against the table way too many times. And my mission right now is to not let you do the same. Okay. Get started. This time we'll go alim2@live.com. We'll say password alim123, confirm password alim123. Then I'm going to change my JavaScript console right here at the top. Instead of elements, I'm going to tap console. This is essentially a log or a running output of what's going on your web browser. And this is why I always say JavaScript is the language of the internet. So anything that runs on a browser is normally JavaScript. And so Flutter does kind of compile down to JavaScript when it's running on the web. So it does output here. So anyways, we'll click create account and notice we got an error. It says uncaught in promise error with stack. If I go to the network tab, actually don't see anything that's like really helpful here. That's kind of it's kind of tough. Damn. Okay. So I have an uncaught in promise error, and it's likely because let's figure out what it was. Likely because something happened in the database. So let's head over to project overview. We'll go build Firestore database. I have a feeling we didn't enable the database. Not quite. Rules. It looks like our database rules are a little strict. I think they're too strict. I think that's what's going on. I think we need to adjust our database. So I'll go settings, Firebase, or excuse me, we'll go settings. Here we go. Firestore rules are not deployed. That's the problem here. So what's happening is that we're trying to write to the database from the front end. That function that writes the database is failing, and it's just kind of breaking the app and not letting it proceed. So again, experience. I'm not sure how I would have found out unless I knew, because the errors that I'm getting here are pretty cryptic. However, I will kind of show you all something, the 10 people that are here. Like, I'm noticing that there are functions in these error traces. This is actually called a stack trace in the world of computer science, where you're seeing all the different functions that are being executed and in order of which they're being executed. So typically when an error happens in computer science, you are trying to understand where did that error occur and what went down during the execution process. What processes were executed in what order, and then you want to pick and find the specific step in that process that broke. That sounds terrible, I know. And that's why FlutterFlow and no code make that so much easier. But having this developer eye enables me, and potentially you as well, to be able to debug this and move a lot faster. That's what's going to separate the greatest low code, no coders from the ones that might struggle a little bit more, just to be straight with you guys. So cool. We got this Firestore rules deployed, and now the user references, we want to deploy this as well. Looks like there's something going on here. Your Firebase project must be on the Blaze plan in order to deploy these user references. So I'll go ahead and kind of upgrade that to Blaze. It's pay as you go. And honestly, I'm not going to even incur any costs here. So I'm just going to put my budget as like $2 and let this go. I know I'm not going to incur any costs because it doesn't, there's so much. The free tier is so generous that like I'm not concerned that I'm going to incur any cost. And if I do, I'll let you guys know, but it's totally fine to upgrade to the Blaze plan because Firebase's free tier is very, very generous. All right, so now let me go back and deploy these user references, and that should enable me to get by. So if this works, we can go back and actually test the auth flow. If we succeed today, we can call it a night. I love celebrating wins. I think that's actually huge as a builder, is to know when to honestly take profits in a sense, because unfortunately we do kind of have some luck on our back when we're building products, and we have a lot of these kind of challenging and complicated systems that we work with. So just like maybe at the poker table or trading stocks or um, yeah, these types of activities and behaviors that require you to walk away, I think it's super important to understand when you have won for the day and not to push yourself too much, because momentum is really important. Like, if you walk away from a basketball game after putting up 10 threes in a row, you're going to feel a lot better than trying to play another game and then airballing that whole game. So I like to walk away confident because that makes me excited for the rest of the day. That energy carries forward with my family, my friends, my relationships. And I can, yeah, use that energy to kind of um, make me a better person through the rest of the day and then come back that next day a lot stronger. Otherwise, if I try to run with that momentum a little too long and then I kind of lose it, that will then carry on the rest of the day. I push myself too hard, I get tired, and then I give everybody in my life poor energy. So as a builder, you're pushing yourself. This is a very like mentally stimulating task, a mentally stimulating behavior that we are all doing, and we're doing this outside of our normal day-to-day jobs. A lot of us don't play video games, watch Netflix, go out with friends. Like we all just build in our free time. So I think like mental health management is critical. I know you didn't sign up to get a mental health lesson from me, but I've learned a lot of these things the hard way too. So I hope you guys can take that for what it's worth. I'm gonna refresh this page. That shouldn't actually affect anything. Not too worried about that. But if I go back to Firebase here, looks like that's in progress. Let's still go back and instant reload this and see if we can get through. I'm not even sure we need the user references rules to be deployed in order for authentication to work. So we'll find that out right now. All right. It did look like we're logged in, so I'll log out, get started. Alim3 at live.com, Alim123, Alim123, create account. Okay. So it does look like something changed, and I was able to these are just wild errors, and I was able to redirect, but it does look like something wild went down. And I'm trying to look at the stack trace here, and it does look like there's something wrong with mostly the UI rendering. Too many unbounded constraints I see. So if I go back to log in, create account, redirects to onboarding question one, and that's totally good because we have onboarding question one right here, but it says there's some unbounded constraints that it's mad at me for. And I'm gonna go make sure that these are fixed. I think that should do it. I think there was just something up with my expansion rules. So I'll hit get started. Alim4 at live.com, Alim123, Alim123. Still kind of mad at me. Render flex children have non-zero flex, but incoming height constraints are unbounded, which means that there is something up with my height somewhere. think it has, I think it's this thing. I think it's this list container. I think it's that. See how this one goes. Essentially, it's saying that like there's some unbounded UI element that is allowing my app to just kind of infinitely expand. And that's why it's really, really mad at me. There she goes. Cool. Right on. So we got it done. And notice how I have the random text here too. I accidentally clicked on one and I think it kind of updated too. So cool. We got the authentication working. And if I go to Firebase and I click on authentication, you'll see Alim 6 landed here. And then if I go to Firestore database, you'll see that there are users being created. One specifically is Alim6 at live.com. So this is absolutely massive. We've made a ton of progress. The one thing I'm noticing that doesn't work right now is when I click on one of these items, it doesn't actually go to the next page. Just for fun, I will click on list container and I will hit my action flow editor, add action, navigate to onboarding question 2, and that will actually take me to onboarding question 2. And while my head is fresh and I remember that there's an issue with the container, I'm going to set the height of the container to 80. What happened essentially was I have an infinite width here, and then I had a like unbounded height here, which means that there was no height assigned to a specific container. And if you have no height assigned, essentially Flutter under the hood thinks that it can be any size. And our app got mad at us because we left it open-ended. So we don't want that to happen again. So I'm going to set that to 80. I'll instant reload this and voila, we've successfully built out the authentication, hooked up Firebase, and got like the first chunk of our app built. So massive, massive day. You even learned a bit about actions. Get started. We'll go Alim 7 at live. Passwords don't match. And at least we know we also have some error handling in place. Gorgeous. What are you looking to achieve? I'll click on this. It does look like we still have an issue, and I think I remember why. It's because I also needed to bound this column right here. Cool. Let's try this one more time. We'll end on a good note. Alim8 at live.com. Gorgeous. Step 1. No, I actually don't think that was my fault though. I think that was FlutterFlow's fault. Let me reload. I wish you could do that every time. Just blame it on FlutterFlow and reload for everything that doesn't work. But I know that one might not have been me. I'm going to reload it one more time just to make sure. There she. Nice, nice, nice. We got it again. Cool. So now we've got onboarding step 1, onboarding step 2. And then tomorrow we will work on onboarding step 3. And we'll try to get some progress on the rest of the app. So nice, nice, nice. Fantastic. So today we successfully integrated authentication and those first screens. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm going to look at the questions now.